go. So, all right. So I am Luba Vangelova, and I'm joined today with Miro Siegel and Brooklyn Wetzel. For those of you who are not familiar with the Hub, there is a lot of information about the overall context on the website and also on the information session that was posted in September. So I won't go over all of that this time. We'll focus more specifically on the 2-day-a-week online micro academy for ages 9 to 12. And if you want more information about the context, either please visit the website or watch the September video, or feel free to shoot an email if you have specific questions. So we'll just dive right into it. So as I mentioned, I'm the founder of the Hub. My background is in writing about self-directed education, as well as other things that I do, but I've also started several co-learning groups in Washington, DC, and I will pass the baton, the virtual baton, to whichever one of you wants to go next to briefly introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Miro Siegel. I am one of the co-facilitators at the Hub's Micro Academy, which launched this September. I am a lifelong self-directed I have a lifelong experience of self-directed education, I should say, with world schooling, with homeschooling, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's been a real joy so far facilitating kids learning in the Micro Academy, and we're really excited to see where it goes. So that's kind of why we're here. We're here to answer any questions and to share, basically give a status update on how things have been going. And yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Brooklyn, who is the other co-facilitator.
Well, I'm Brooklyn Wetzel. I'm a self-directed learner. I'm an agile learning facilitator and an artist. I work in ceramics and multimedia. I'm a parent of a 10 and 14-year-old homeschoolers right now. And I'm facilitating with Miro and helping create the Hub Micro Academy.
All right, thank you for that. And so we'll talk a little bit first about kind of the big picture, the philosophy, the guiding philosophy, because that's always the most important thing, is what are you trying to create? So the goal is to create a positive, healthy culture and a sense of community, a space with a solid, I would say, nourishing, emotionally nourishing sense of community, but also then on the intellectual fronts to expand horizons, to introduce children to new ideas, new concepts, new bits of information, new people, new styles of interacting, and also to expand their skills and knowledge base in a range of different areas. So if you could talk about how that philosophy has been translated into action in the Micro Academy, and specifically about the foundational elements of culture creation.
Well, I'll just start out with some of the foundation of our day is an opening circle. So we make time every day to check in with everyone. And that really, setting time to listen and practice active listening with everyone within our group really creates a sense of community. And that's the first beginning 20 minutes that we're together. And I think it really is a grounding place to start the day. What would you add, Miro?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely very important to our whole structure. We also have a closing circle that functions in a very similar way. Active listening is, imperative in everything that we do together because, well, philosophically and also logistically, because we're all inside one virtual room, right? So being very intentional with the way that we listen to one another is hugely important. We've got a number of really great tools that we use to better facilitate these philosophies, such as, we have visual representations of how we're doing, and we share that with one another. We have a game shifting board, which I'm sure we'll go in and explain that later. But we've got all of these different tools that basically better enhance the autonomy and the spirit of community within every participant. That's something that we really are intentional about.
When we go about setting our day, we focus on democratic decision making, and we're working together as a team to figure out what we want to do and accomplish.
And could you talk a little bit more about active listening and how that fits into, like, for example, the category of nonviolent communication, because not all viewers may be familiar with the terms.
Really, the goal of active listening, the main tenet of active listening is to make sure that everybody's needs are being met within our community. So we're not listening just to respond. We choose to listen, to hear. We're not waiting for somebody to be done speaking so that we can interject and, speak in our turn. We're listening so that we actually hear what the other person is saying. And that might sound like a little bit obvious, but it's something so simple that often gets taken for granted in a lot of different situations. And it really helps to be conscious about it in a group setting, especially, being exposed to that philosophy at such a young age. That's hugely important. And even for me, I mean, it's still something that I find helpful. So
we try to dig deeper to get to the core need of like what a person is trying to communicate. So we try to share, kind of more critical thinking around our ideas and kind of explore our emotions and feelings around those.
Okay. And how do you, in most conversations, the verb that would be used is, how do you get the children to do active listening? But I'm going to phrase it differently. How do you encourage the children to do active listening? Because in this setting, we are not trying to get people to do things, right? I mean, if you could talk about, maybe the difference there between getting someone to do that and encouraging someone and modeling and so on, and how do you go about that?
Well, I mean, you did just say it. I mean, the main way that we do these things is by modeling. So we have to demonstrate ourselves as facilitators. We have to demonstrate that, one, these things are important, and two, that this isn't just something that we're asking the participants to do, but it's something that we're doing as well, and we're willing to do. That is huge. And basically everything that we do, that plays a really big part of it. This is not a coercive environment. There's no penalties for certain behaviors. There's no punishments. It's more of basically just coming to an understanding rather than everybody is acting by a code of rules. Everybody is acting according to a code that we all agreed on at the beginning of the term. So
I like to think that we're building a sense of genuine engagement. So listening and paying attention to how other people are feeling and what they want to do kind of comes naturally in that space.
And perhaps if you could just touch a little bit more on, because it's not really a free-for-all environment. There are certain, there is accountability for how one behaves toward the group and to other individuals. So can you perhaps expand a little bit more on that there are certain expectations of how one is to behave, and there are going to be consequences, if someone really transgresses, like, they're not going to be part of the group, at a certain point, because the health of the group has to, come first. So if you could just talk a little bit about that for, people who may be less familiar with the kind of consent-based education model.
Right. I think a lot of it has to do with the hierarchy of our social circle that we've created, in that we don't really see the co-facilitators as being above the participants, as the ones handing down the punishment or handing down, the lay of the land, basically. So yeah, when somebody does transgress, or if somebody does transgress within the group, it is not just the job of the co-facilitator to hold them accountable, but it is also the job of the other participants. It is the job of the community as a whole. And so it's something that, instead of it becoming punitive. It is more of a basically a community discussion. It's something that everybody has a say in. Everybody is able to air their perspective. Everybody is able to talk about, you know, their own story, and then we're able to try and reconcile those things. And that's the work of a community.
And we have community agreements around respect. Respect yourself, respect others, respect the space. Obviously, this is a virtual space, but it still applies. Respecting people's time to speak, respecting people's digital work, and you know, being an active listener and active participant is also part of that respect that we share with each other.
Okay. And so could you talk about, because one of the questions that I've received is, you know, what does a day look like? Because, I mean, this isn't a model, you know, many people are familiar with, so they may not be able to quite picture it in their heads. So if you could kind of make it more concrete, what does a day look like? And where's the balance between structure and flexibility?
Sure. So every day tends to, like you said, look a little bit differently, but we tend to follow a general structure when it comes to the flow of the day. So we're together for 3.5 hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays. The very first time slot, so we split that up into 3 different time slots. So the very first one is when we do our group meeting. We have our opening circle, and we kind of tend to have that first time slot be very light. So we're oftentimes you know, checking in with one another, and then if we've got time before our first break, you know, we play a lot of games. We try to lighten the mood. We kind of get that creative community energy flowing, and then after that, our second time slot tends to deal with activities. So either Brooklyn or myself or the participants themselves will also bring activities that they are interested in, they'd like to share with the whole group. So this can be, you know, there's so many different things that we've covered over the last few months. I mean, it could be like interesting riddles and educational YouTube videos, or you know, puzzles that we want to play with one another. And there's all of these different things that we do then. So that's kind of the slot for that. It's a very active, stimulating time slot. And then the very last time slot that we spend together is the longest. And that is usually dedicated to work on our projects that we've committed to. So there's a lot of like self-work or individual work. There's also a lot of group work. So it can be one or the other. Sometimes it can be both. But it always tends to surround, like, you know, holding each other accountable and fulfilling the commitments that we've made.
I was thinking about how we kind of balance our time between research and educating ourselves about the things that come up in our play. So we're doing research and play and creative work, and so we're kind of balancing those between the 3 time slots. You know, there's flexibility and there's structure in that, and we decide those things together depending on like what our commitments are and the interest of the group.
And so could you talk a little bit about the decision-making process?
Sure, I could talk about that. So we've recently, this has been a really great tool, and I actually am going to share my screen. So I'll show you guys exactly what this tool looks like. This is our game shifting board. So we use this every single day that we're together. Basically, one person is the game master for that day. And that means that they are responsible for basically selecting you know, or changing how we go about our day in a wide number of ways. So we have our opening intention. We have, you know, what are the things that we're doing over our break time? We have what is our closing intention? Do we have a theme for our Zoom virtual backgrounds? You know, stuff like that. Even things that come down to like our talking style. So that's a really, really significant one. So one person tends to kind of lead on this, but it's also, you know, the whole group also gives their, you know, opinion. So there's definitely a really good mix of that. So this is just one tool that we've been using to, you know, better enhance the way that our participants are making decisions about how we spend our time together. But I thought that was just something that would be useful to see.
And The are you still using the Fistify sort of voting, I guess, methodology? And if so, could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we use Fistify. We don't really need it with our group right all the time, but when we can kind of tell that some people are interested in some things and we can't, we're kind of getting mixed reviews on the options in front of us, we can use Fistify voting. So like this is a block and this is I'm totally in. So then you can use all of the things in between to kind of like give people on the screen a view of how interested you are in it. A 2 would be like, maybe we should find something else. I mean, I don't want if everybody's like not into that idea, then we can look for something else. Or maybe some people are really into it. So we're going to split into 2 breakout rooms. And so people can do something they're really into and the other group can find something they're more interested in doing.
Yeah, and I'd say it's also important to look at it less as a way of like voting and more just as a visual representation of how interested every participant is in the proposed subject. So, obviously we try to work on a consensus model. So, it tends not to be majority rules. We try to get everybody to consent on some level to the proposed activity. And so that's just a really useful tool to gauge exactly where everybody's at when it comes to all the different things that we're going to be exploring together.
Okay. And could you talk a little bit more about some of the other tools that are used, such as the Wonderwall and maybe other tools that are worth highlighting and what their utility is?
Well, we use Basecamp as a platform to communicate with the group and with parents that are involved. And we have a place where we can drop documents and share files relating to our creative projects and also share activities and ideas for upcoming meetings. That's been a really important tool for us. And then you want to tell them about the Wonderwall, Miro?
Sure. So the Wonderwall, it's just a really good place to ask questions. So that's the goal there. Basically, any pending questions that we come up with, through our conversations, through really just anything, we ask our questions on the Wonderwall, and it's a place where our community can ask questions together and seek answers together. So every once in a while, usually once a week, we make a really good effort to get into the Wonderwall and to kind of set aside some time to really try and answer a lot of the questions that are found on there. But it's just a really good tool to promote curiosity and to promote, following up on those thoughts and those questions.
And the Wonderwall takes place on the Milanote software platform, which is a great tool for project management. And so we have like explored that and learned how to use storyboards and to like organize notes and links and pictures all together in this interactive forum that we use.
Okay. And also, I'll just add that Basecamp is also a platform that can be used for the participants to interact with each other outside of the session times. They're not limited to only talking to each other during the sessions. And they have access to talk to each other. The facilitators are also, occasionally posting things outside of the sessions. The parents are sometimes sharing things. I'm sometimes sharing things. So it's kind of the, I guess the town square or the community square for the group. Well, Basecamp, it's right there in its name. So anyway, so could you talk, so you talked a little bit about in detail about setting the foundations and some of the activities, although I think if you could mention some more of the different types of activities, like I think there was kind of a machines and physics games and the geography kind of deduction things and the quizzes. And if you could just touch on some of the things, the limericks, the Mad Libs and so on, just what is the breadth of quote unquote topics? I mean, we're interdisciplinary. We don't divide the world into topics, but sometimes for certain purposes, such as preparing portfolios, if those are required, sometimes we do segment things into what subjects, topics, etc., in the conventional way that those words are used. So could you just talk a little bit about that to give a sense of the breadth and also depth?
Sure, I'd say we cover a wide range of topics. I mean, we're covering things like philosophy, geography, math, logic, problem solving, history, just a lot of general knowledge is being thrown around. So we do this in a number of ways. Oftentimes it is gamified. It's something that the relationship to learning is kind of made fun. So we do a lot of trivia. We do a lot of, games through like puzzles, different things like that. There's a lot of games like GeoGuessr, Kahoot. We play a game called The Incredible Machine, which is really interesting because it's an MS-DOS game from before all of our participants were even born, even myself, actually.
It's my childhood game.
But it's been really fun, and we've been playing a lot of stuff like that. It's interesting to really see what the participants react to because, like we said, everything is basically the decision making is done communally. And so when the participants request certain things, we really know what resonates with them and what's sticking and what they're getting out of it. So there's a lot of that going on.
I wanted to also say that, I mean, there's also, those are kind of launching pads when we play like trivia games or like GeoGuessr. Those are like launching pads for discussions and like facts that all of us know, and we start sharing and discussing things around the places we go on the internet and the things that we do. Miro and I also bring in like other discussion ideas and projects that kind of lend to critical thinking and like you said, philosophy. And let me see when I was saying to this. Yes, and then our creative project. I just feel like I just need to really, I'm so proud of what we've been working on. We've been working this whole term on a whole creative world. And then we've been picking different projects out of it, advertising projects, creative writing projects, nonfiction, well, fiction in a nonfiction, nonfiction about our fiction world. And also doing design work and project management, and that's been really rewarding.
Great. And there was something I was gonna add about that. I totally lost my train of thought there, but anyway. Oh yeah, I was going to say one thing that stood out to me is that you had mentioned at one point you were talking with the kids about how does one know that they know something. Is that correct? Did I? So you're even getting into very meta things. I mean, we're not being at all limited by these are, the whatever standards that a 9 to 12-year-old, should be doing or whatever. I mean, we're kind of going way beyond in many cases, and just not taking the age into account so much so as the thirst for knowledge and the ability to converse, right? I mean, if you could just talk about how the age, it's relevant in the sense that there are developmental stages, but in the other sense, it's children of any age can be interested in all sorts of things at a depth that sometimes I think surprises adults, right?
Definitely. It's so far my involvement with the Micro Academy has been a really great lesson in not going into these conversations with these preconceived ideas of what somebody will be able to add to the conversation or what somebody will be getting out of the conversation, right? Because so we have that age range of 9 to 12, but we have participants that are on the younger side and that are on the older side. And sometimes I'll think that, this is the person that's going to say something about this and really going to connect with this. But sometimes it's really the younger participants who are curious about that kind of thing. And they have these really interesting points that they bring up. And for me, it's just been a really humbling experience, just personally. I think it's been, incredibly valuable to give participants, regardless of their age, really an opportunity to explore things and to feel like they're heard and just to feel like they're able.
And since we're not locked into a specific curriculum, if some interest or question opens up by like our discussion or by a game we're playing, we can take a moment. And that's why we have a fact checker in the game shifting board. And that's like a coveted position, because we will call upon the fact checker to check the facts. And and that's a part of the process of going about our day.
And I think also, I mean, one bit of feedback we've heard from parents is the pleasant surprise at their children being able to be in leadership positions. And like you said, kind of building on like feeling able and feeling like they're in a position that maybe, is not typical in most classrooms. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, that might be interesting.
Miro and I are really on the same page in equalizing, who we are in the group, and we're like creating every opportunity that we can to, allow the kids to move into leadership roles and for us to move into supporting roles, and the game shifting board is a big part of that. But that's also just part of the our philosophy that we come to the group with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And so also the facilitators are themselves participants. I mean, everyone is a participant. It's not the kind of traditional sage on a stage sort of dynamic in a traditional classroom. So could you just talk a little bit about that? Like, how does that look? I mean, it's a model that, a lot of people may not have seen in action when it's, adults and, younger people together. So how does that look?
Right. So, I mean, the main tenet of this philosophy is modeling, right? It's demonstrating by doing. And so, like I said earlier, I touched on it a bit earlier that Brooklyn and I will never ask participants to do something that we ourselves are not willing to do within the group. And we also want to demonstrate. We want to participate. It's also fun because we want to participate in a lot of the different things that we're doing. But it basically just shows that everybody can do this thing. It's not just us telling them to do it. They're getting guidance by seeing the way that we interact with the activities that we bring. We're bringing up conversation points. We're bringing up things that we find interesting. And that in of itself just sparks a whole lot of social learning. So that's definitely very beneficial.
And I was thinking, well, it kind of looks like we have commitments and homework like that has to do with our creative project. We have things that we're contributing to our group project. So we're not just like creating a team and supporting a team. We're a part of the team that's creating things and making things happen.
And I remember at one point, Miro, I guess a month or two ago, I think you said something about how much you felt you were learning, from the sessions. So, both of you are as much, learners as facilitators, right?
Definitely. And I mean, this might be kind of meta, but that behavior is something that we want to model as well. We want to say like, you're able to learn, into your adulthood. The learning doesn't stop. And that's something that us as co-facilitators in our role, it's very important to us. We've got into this role deciding, obviously not to be the sage on the stage, not to be this position of power, like in a hierarchy, but it's also just about like, yeah, I guess I'm just kind of getting ahead of myself, but it is about demonstrating to the whole group that, we're in on it.
Yeah, and showing what it's like to be in a learning community and to support each other in our interests and our goals.
Okay. And could you talk a little bit next about, because one of the things that's been mentioned is how this feels a little bit like an oasis in these, shall we say, turbulent times that we're in, and just the effect that has on the importance of emotional well-being and how that's kind of fundamental to learning anything,
Well, our Zoom room is a really happy and fun place, and I'm really excited to come to it every day. And I get that feeling from everyone in our group. And so I know that we're doing our job in this time that can be so difficult of really creating a safe and fun space to be online when that can be really challenging at times.
Yeah, I'm definitely of the opinion that learning happens best when it is, when it is easy, when not necessarily when it is easy, but when there is no pressure, there's no fear, there's a certain comfort to it. And I think that as facilitators, us being able to, create as comfy an environment as possible to facilitate that learning, it's definitely been really good so far. So.
Okay. And could you talk a little bit about the plans to engage the wider community, that even though this is an Oasis, it's also at the same time not this cloistered environment where we're like separate from the rest of, the world?
Sure. So we have a lot of plans to bring in guest speakers on a wide variety of topics, as well as we have plans that in the future we would also like to, like you said, Luba, just involve the wider community. So we want to put out calls for volunteers or people who happen to be very knowledgeable on certain topics. We want to be able to create a really great database, or rather a resource for our participants to just to better get in touch with people who are knowledgeable and skillful on the things that they're interested in. So for them to be able to find that support in that capacity is definitely a goal that the hub is trying to achieve.
Yeah. And also as part of that, to create a culture not just of receiving, but of then turning around and giving based on your strengths, right? So looking for ways then that they can kind of pass the favor forward, I guess, or pay it forward. That's the expression I was looking for, to other people, if they encounter people who could benefit from their expertise, because everyone has strengths. Everyone at any age has strengths that they can share with the world.
We definitely want to model a sense of community and sharing, and being able to reach out into our individual networks to, help the kids build access and get the information and the support that they need.
Okay. And how do you know that the children are learning? Since we don't use, standard kind of quizzes. Well, I mean, you are doing quizzes, but not like graded quizzes, and there are no standardized tests, and nothing like that. There are no grades. So how do you gauge whether children are developing, growing, learning?
Well, one of the main shifts in the way the Micro Academy has been running is we don't have any expectations that we place on the participants ourselves as co-facilitators. Instead, we encourage all of our participants to set their own goals, to set their own, basically to manage their own expectations and to make their own commitments to the things that they want to do, the things that they want to learn. And we know when they're learning things because they're achieving their own goals. They're self-actualizing within the context of our own space. And that's been really, really big.
Yeah, and I would echo that with just saying I feel a sense of genuine engagement because of the community building that we've done. So everyone is, we don't have to push it to have people meet their commitments, and to stay engaged. When they leave, they come back, they've been thinking about what we were talking about before, they have new things to share. So it's that genuine engagement that I don't think that you find in that you can create in this kind of environment.
Yeah. And one of the other bits of feedback we've received from parents is that they found their kids, talking during dinner or whatever about things that they learned during the sessions, and they were continuing to discuss the things with other people outside of the sessions. So kind of it doesn't stop when the session ends, and it's kind of continuing, and I think that's clearly showing an engagement level. No one's being forced, obviously, to do this, but they're choosing to do it and to kind of go deeper, and also kind of to share with the group things that they have been doing outside of the sessions that maybe don't even relate to anything else in the sessions, but to then share those things with the group. And that's another way of social learning. It's exposing the other children to the passions of the other kids, or passions or interests of the other kids, because they are willingly coming. And I remember like one example was one of the children wrote a story on their own time and then shared it with the group, and I guess there was discussion and so on. Or someone else wrote I think a video game or a computer program, and was very proud to show that, and got feedback. And the parents said it just felt really good for the child to get that kind of feedback and acknowledgement for something that they had done also outside of the session that didn't even have anything to do with what was being done. So okay, and then I don't know if there are any questions, but other than that, anything else you, Miro or Brooklyn, would like to add, or we can.
Oh, I was just going to add to what you said, that I really feel like we have an individualized approach that is just really focusing on the well-being of all of our participants. And so that's our meta goal. And we do a lot of really fun and educational things while doing that.
Yeah. All right. And so for anyone who might be interested in participating, we are taking applications for the spring term. It is on an ongoing basis, so there's no set deadline. We would be admitting people at points during the session at which it makes sense, based on where projects are and so on. If anyone is interested in that, they can go to the website or interact with us on Facebook, or fill out the contact form on the website and express interest. And then it'll just be some conversations with myself and then with Miro and Brooklyn to gauge the fit, answer any questions that are specific to the child or children. And then we can do basically a little kind of, I guess, an audit, an opportunity to audit a session or two, to kind of, be in the background for the child to kind of see for themselves if there's, any question about, whether it would be a good fit or not. There is that possibility also before making a full commitment. So yeah, that's it. If there are any other questions. Oh, yes, Miro.
Oh, never mind. We're all good.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So feel free to get in touch with us if you would like more information. We also have a YouTube channel where you can find. So in addition to the Micro Academy, we are also doing other things kind of on an a la carte basis. I'll just add, we are having a game design workshop, for instance, this weekend, a 2-day game design workshop. I recently started doing a series of interviews with education and parenting experts about kind of big picture questions, but also very practical, like the first conversation covered things like what is the purpose of education, but also what have researchers found to be the features of really effective online learning programs, and how does one assess, how does a parent assess whether their child is learning, and when are video games educational and when are they just really not so much. And next up, I'm going to be talking to the authors of a book called Resilience Parenting, about how to develop greater resilience in children. After that, I'll be talking to someone who is an expert in how to develop win-win relationships within a family, which has a bearing on education as well as just everything, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of plans in the works. So the videos, the interviews are being posted, available for the public on the YouTube channel as soon as they're ready, and also on our Facebook page. So we look forward to also welcome any suggestions for other things that you would like to hear more about. I can, maybe try and find people to interview on those things, because we're trying to be a community service also, just for the larger population, not just benefiting the children that are enrolled in the Micro Academy or enrolled in, the a la carte things like the game design workshop, but also just to be a resource and a hub, hence the name, for the wider kind of community. So, all right. Well, thank you for watching, and all the best.